Hi, guys. I'm back, and we're at the top of page 96 of chapter 5 of A Mighty Long Way. This is part 2. The atmosphere was noticeably lighter. One of the ministers in the room led us all in prayer. Heads were bowed and tears rolled down many cheeks as the minister asked God to protect and guide us on this historic day. But I was slightly distracted. Of all things, I couldn't stop thinking about whether I would remember the way to the three classes I had attended 2 days earlier. The light chatter returned, but it was soon drowned out by the rumble of the military vehicles making their way down the quiet residential street. The army was here, someone announced. A wave of excitement rushed through the room. I dashed to the picture window in the living room as the other students also scattered to get a closer look. A convoy of jeeps rolled past the house and idled in the street. Soldiers dressed in helmets and combat gear hopped out and blocked 28th Street on each end. They stood at attention with their rifles as a large olive colored station wagon pulled up in front of the house. Mrs. Bates called us away from the window. It was time, she said. We gathered our books and made our way to the door. I felt more ready than I'd ever been for this moment. As we stepped outside, cameras flashed around us from high and low. Reporters shouted questions and jotted into small notebooks. Neighbors stood in their yards and along the streets to bear witness. One by one, the nine of us climbed into the station wagon. A topless jeep filled with soldiers led the way. Another followed us. This time we drove at a normal slow pace. Black mothers and fathers who had been held captive inside their homes for days by the rampaging white mob spilled out onto front porches, yards, and the sides of streets. As our convoy moved up 16th Street in the vicinity of the school, I saw small clusters of white parents and children walking away from the school. I learned later that Major General Edwin Walker, commander of the operation, had met with the white students in the auditorium just before we arrived to explain his mission. You have nothing to fear from my soldiers, and no one will interfere with your coming, going, or your peaceful pursuit of your studies, he told them. My soldiers are here because they have been ordered to be here. They are seasoned, well trained soldiers, many of them combat veterans. Being soldiers, they are as determined as I to carry out their orders. A group of the students walked out. Perhaps they were the stragglers we saw exiting the school grounds as we pulled onto the campus. Their faces looked angry and hateful. But this time, there were no loud, hateful words. This time, there were no speeding or trying to hide from the mobs. The would be members of the mob had been dispersed, some forcefully, before we arrived. The U.S. military had tucked all nine of us securely under its wing, and in just a few minutes, we would fly right into the heart of Central, almost daring those hateful men and women to try to put their hands on us now. For a few precious moments, life seemed to roll in slow motion as our caravan turned left onto Park Street from 16th. Hundreds of paratroopers lined the streets around the schools. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their M1 rifles and bayonets ready. The, they had been in position since 5 a.m. The news reporter said, cordoning off of the school for the 3 blocks on either side. A few students milled around outside, watching the scene quietly, curiously. The streets were graveyard quiet, except for the occasional crackle of the soldiers' walkie talkies. The soldiers snapped to attention when our station wagon pulled up. This time, we rolled past the side door we had entered on that terrifying first day. Our caravan pulled to a stop right in front of the school. This time, we were going through the front door. Until that moment, it hadn't fully registered that the game of ducking and hiding was over. I could hold my head up. We had a right to walk through those front doors like anyone else. And the President of the United States has sent our U.S. military to ensure that right. The car door swung open. It was 9:22 a.m. My heart thumped faster than ever before as I stepped out of the station wagon. The morning sky seemed brighter. The nine of us got into line mostly by twos. A helicopter hovered above. Several soldiers trotted across the yard to catch up with us. Then 22 of them positioned themselves completely around us. I felt safe, protected, and proud. In tandem, we began to move slowly, deliberately, off the curb, up the walkway, past the fountain, up the left set of steps, and then up the next step. Finally, I stood at that grand entrance with its heavy wooden doors, surrounded by so much brick and stone. I took a deep breath. The granite eyes of those four Greek gods and goddesses above my head seemed to peer down at me. Ambition, personality, opportunity, preparation. Walk with me now, I implored, and with a new sense of calm, I stepped across the threshold. The end. Come back next time for chapter 6.